Hey guys, we are live. My guest today is going to be Russ Hamilton. We are going to answer whatever questions you send our way. We're excited, but we also want to, as promised, go over a video that happened at Maricopa County involving an inmate named Justin Avery. I'm actually going to borrow a clip from a YouTube channel called Law and Crime. I believe that's the name. Let me just double check that real quick. Law and Crime. It's actually got the logo right on the video. And the reason why I wanted to use that video is because I love the way the guy breaks down the video. He gives us a lot of information. And then me and Russ could also feed in what we believe are some concerns that we see. But again, it happened in Maricopa County. I believe that's out in Arizona. If I'm correct, I'm sure Russ could help me out when he comes on. Let me actually just bring Russ on now. What am I doing here? What's up, Russ?
Oh, you didn't tell me it was live.
No, yeah, it's live. We're on. Oh, yeah. Hey, Russ, Maricopa County, that's Arizona, right? Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, that's actually that is the largest county in Arizona, as a matter of fact. And I believe that's home to a lot of news articles on voting and voting machines and some elections and some issues that they've had there in that particular state and in that particular county.
Well, I think Tara Ellis, love her to death, by the way. I love Tara Ellis. There, I put it right on YouTube. Let the whole world know that I love Tara Ellis. She's from Maricopa County. Wait till you see this video. It's extremely disturbing. Tara Ellis actually comes from us from Duty Ron, but she's one of the she's been with us pretty much when I first started teaming up with Duty Ron. So we're going back a few years already. So Tara Ellis is, Tear Talk family as well. We're also friends on Facebook, so we get to see each other's families grow, which is pretty cool.
You have friends on Facebook?
One or two. At least I have a real account, Russ. At least I have a real account.
Hey, I have multiple real accounts and more fake ones than you can shake a stick at.
Yeah, well, you know how to maneuver through Facebook there. I mean, sometimes you got to do it.
Old Zuckercuck's always trying to shut me down.
Yeah, well, yeah, anybody that is kind of pro law enforcement, unfortunately. So I want to get into the video, and then guys, since we're live, we'll also answer any questions, even if it's outside the video. But let's just give a chance to kind of review the video first, because when people click the link right or click the video, that's what they're expecting to see. So guys, real quick, I'm going to show you this video. I'm going to let it play. It's going to be about a couple of minutes, so it'll be quick. But again, it's coming from the Law and Crime YouTube channel. I'm going to, hopefully they don't, give me a copyright strike. I'm going to yell fair use, fair use, fair use, because I love the way the guy broke this down. He's got a lot of good information that he provides. But if you're not familiar with the incident, in Maricopa County, a male inmate named Justin Avery attempted to sexually assault a female inmate after crawling past a security guard, they mean correctional officer, at the intake, transfer, and release facility. The incident, captured on surveillance, which I'll show you guys, showed Avery sliding on the floor unnoticed, eventually reaching the woman's side, where he attempted to assault a woman. Another female inmate alerted the officers, who intervened. Avery now faces additional charges for attempted sexual assault and aggravated assault. And this incident prompted a review of facility procedures to prevent future occurrences. By the way, and I think they mentioned in the video, when they asked the inmate, like, what the hell were you doing? He actually admitted that he wanted to rape her. I mean, it's insane. Hey, JoJo. All right, so let me show you this video real quick, guys. I think you may find this interesting. So let me put that on. There it is. Hold on one second, guys. I'm getting better at this. Okay, guys, again, Law and Crime is the YouTube channel where I got this video from. You guys got to check it out. And here it is.
So, with that in mind, Avery's arrested. He's taken to jail. And this surveillance video from inside the intake, transfer, and release facility near the jail is from a few days later. So it's April 17th. So this room is divided into two sections. There's a waiting area for women, and then there's another one for men. There's a desk at the dividing line where a deputy sits, supposed to be keeping an eye on things. It's almost 4 a.m. at this point, so a lot of the detainees are trying to sleep. Some are in street clothes, others are in orange jail jumpsuits, And a lot of them have huddled down inside their shirts to try to stay warm or to block out the light. Some are spread out on the floor, and that includes our suspect, Avery. So Avery, as you see in this video, seems to get up off the floor, stretches, appears to wait for one of the deputies to leave the room. Then he sits down and slides out of view of the deputy, allegedly crawling and pushing himself backwards around the desk. He appears to get away with this for a little over a minute as he pushes himself toward a woman in white who's trying to sleep on the floor of the woman's side of the room. Then you have other cameras that give us a view of Avery getting closer to the woman before he appears and allegedly starts to pull his pants down and expose himself. Now, there are other women sitting in the same area. One appears to be asleep on the floor while the other is in a chair. It's unclear from the video if she says something to Avery, but he seems to put his finger to his lips in a be quiet gesture. Court documents say the woman said, "Hey, get off of her." And that's when Avery allegedly shushed her. And that is when the deputy looks up, realizes what's going on, realizes that Avery's on the wrong side of the room. And as soon as he's spotted, Avery appears to stand up, pulling up his pants as he walks away from the woman on the floor.
There's a secret method to sell literally thousands of books on Amazon every month that doesn't involve being.
According to court documents, he later admitted he planned to rape her. So the deputy pulls out restraints, has a conversation with Avery for a few seconds before more deputies show up, put the cuffs on him. Avery seems to resist a little bit as they take him to another part of the facility. So, Justin.
All right, let me get us on. Hey, Russ, that video is extremely disturbing. What's your first take on it?
One of those things where this being an intake situation, and not just an intake, but a jail intake kind of situation, sometimes they are temporarily mixing the sexes together. They're not going to house them there, but when it's overnight like that, the potential for that exists. But it also exists, even if you were only, even if you were, segregating people according to their sex, because we see things like this happen all the time. And in the wee hours of the morning, fortunately, no more than that happened. Fortunately, some of those other female inmates were looking out for her. But, this also, could have, I'm not saying this situation, but these are the kind of things that you have to watch out for, because this will also happen in situations where it's consensual. Now, this was obviously not consensual, but it's something that you still have to watch out for, because inmates, being inmates, are specifically precluded by statutes and states and the feds from engaging in even consensual types of sex. I was just doing a walkthrough of an old facility, and it was not up to even the standards of this one that we just saw. And the sergeant was relating to me how they had temporarily had an issue in one of their heating and cooling ducts, which had allowed a female inmate to get up through the pod and into the male inmate section. Now, fortunately, at least for that facility, what ended up happening there was consensual, but they still could have been liable for millions of dollars for these things happening, even if they're ostensibly kind of outside their control. But really, supposedly, nothing is outside of our control. So, I'm glad that it worked out. I'm glad that the female inmate there, wasn't, hurt or scared or anything more than that happened there. But hey, it's a wake up call. Those deputies, I'm not saying that they weren't aware, but they certainly weren't as aware as they should have been.
Yeah, and it sucks because when you watch a video like that, one is, if you work in corrections, the first thing you're thinking is like, what the hell are we doing wrong here, guys? And you want to do a breakdown, because me and Russ were talking about this, but it's like, I don't know, and this is not to kind of do that Monday morning quarterback thing, but it's tough because you see such obvious mistakes that even when you want to correct it, you can't help but also being just being upset. Like just seeing that all these concerns are happening and they're just such easy concerns that this should not even happen. Let's just say that. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, they shouldn't happen. There should have been maybe a higher level of awareness. Just bringing back to my own mind, though, some things on, policy and procedure. Hey, you know what? It may be graveyard shift right now. Guess what, inmates? There's no laying on the floor. Bringing that back in. Everyone needs to be seated in the seat. Hey, you're tired and sleepy. Guess what? I am too. And so when we start to see, the initial breakdown of discipline, where we're just kind of, trying to be, have some level of, compassion for people. Sometimes, that compassion can get in the way of good, solid correctional practices. And so, what we want to see there is, hey, maybe some more yellow lines, maybe some physical. They don't have to be secure barriers, but maybe, some barriers to better delineate, hey, where people are going to stay and sit. It's hard to tell by that video. I would put up in that area after this, learning experience. We must always learn, from our mistakes, some more half round mirrors and things like that, because we want to eliminate blind spots. Yeah, you're a deputy and you got to do intake. And so you got to be sitting down and staring at your computer screen. And, we need to make that whole area so that there's no chance of any of those kinds of shenanigans taking place. So, like I say, when mistakes happen, don't pass it by. Don't try and cover it up. You want to get not only ahead of it, but you want to mitigate future circumstances like that. But we should always be trying to critically think about the bad things that can happen based on what we do have and not actually wait for something to happen.
Yeah, guys, there will be times, like especially in an intake facility or receiving facility. I mean, there could be moments where the layout, unfortunately, doesn't allow for immediate separation between male and females. And when that happens, you definitely got to have that extra security presence. One, obviously, to make sure both sides are separated, and two, extra security. I mean, right here, to be able to look at that and not see that there's anything that marks a line, even as simple like Russ said, a yellow line that kind of paints this divide, or maybe just having an officer somewhere in that front area to make sure that they could, make sure that no one's trying to cross in between lines. That's definitely something that I think they're going to have to revisit. And I love what Russ said before, when Russ mentioned the fact that you got people laying on the floor. It's very unstructured. When we originally looked at this video, that was our immediate concern, to know that the environment is that lax, that before you even see the inmate, basically sneaking around the wall, that you got inmates just laying on the floor or even covered up. I'll be honest with you. Some of them are covered up because it's cold. I wouldn't let them cover up. I want to see their face. I want to see their hands. I know what Russ said. I know it's late, but this isn't the area where you sleep. Sorry, guys. This is the area where you're going to stay alert. We're going to get you processed, and eventually we'll move you through. But, I also didn't like that either, Russ, the way they're covered up. And I like how the guy was trying to provide an excuse for them. But to be honest with you, from our professional standpoint, that room needed a lot of authority in there to correct what we originally saw. Would you agree, Russ, including the inmates covering themselves up?
Yeah. And, even in places where housing is more established, if you will, we go into those places, and though we weren't telling people to uncover or anything like that, the first thing that you're doing as you're moving through there is your light goes to where their hands should be or probably are. And if someone starts to get up because they're going to go to the bathroom or they want to ask you a question, pull all the blankets down. I want to be able to see your hands if you're going to get up while we're inside this room, and that kind of thing. Those that are in the profession know goes on all night long. You don't allow some guy to come up, covered up with, blankets all over him. You want to make sure that you at least have a good visual on him. And I don't care, even in dorm settings, with ostensibly level ones, the next level 1 killer is on his way to being a level 4 easily. Or there's level 4s in there that have just, worked their way down. So you don't take it for granted. You don't get complacent about it. And the first thing I always want to see is, hands, and second of all, or not at second of all, because there's no real order to this, is, don't approach me while we're in here unless, I invite you to come up, and then I'm going to search you first. But, tempting to get lax in the middle of the night.
Yeah, guys, we're going to kind of go a little off topic too. That was just a quick little video, but once we get questions coming in, we're going to try to answer this. This is a great question that comes from Tara. Tara, because we've been doing some coverage on Wade Wilson. Again, we're not experts on Wade Wilson, but sometimes me, Russ, or me and Joe, or Joe and Russ and Joe, or no, Joe, Russ and me. There's the three of us. And I, whatever it is, we'll sometimes see something that fall within our area of expertise. So we'll explore it. Maybe provide some insight. And yes, sometimes we may have to be corrected on the context. But with that said, when it comes to that specific area of expertise, we're pretty spot on with that knowledge. Again, we don't claim to be true crime experts, but I feel that we've gotten a lot of people from true crime channels. So I figure if there's something that crosses into our area of expertise that we could provide insight to, or maybe challenge stuff that's already out there, me, Russ, and Joe have been trying to explore that. And Tara has a great question. She said, even though it's a little topic, but that's fine. That's what we're here for. But since we're talking about supervision, you've done a lot on Wade Wilson. How was he able to get all those face tattoos in jail? That's not a one-time sitting for a tattoo. Okay, Russ is already smiling, so I'm not going to steal his glory. Russ, would you like to answer that question for Tara?
Okay, so this is really in my wheelhouse. The structure that the Florida Department of Corrections has for condemned inmates is really higher, apparently, from what I've seen, than what has been going on behind the scenes at the jail. And so kudos to the guys there in Florida Department of Corrections catching that. But the thing that we were always trying to fight, just because of disease and because of, bad debts, or people get a bad tattoo and then, suddenly they want to fight someone over it, or things like that. You have to really take the whole tattooing thing seriously. But, I would see it all the time, and I would catch people making what I call ink factories. And they would go in there and as a matter of fact, we actually have, I think it's my highest rated video on Tier Talk. It has to do with tattooing. I think there's over 100,000 views on it. They make these little oil lamps, and they catch all the lamp black soot, and then they put it in some shampoo and put a little rock in there, and they'll make that. And then they'll get, little tiny electric motors that, come out of the old DVD players and things like that. And they'll manage to get a little piece of wire, and they'll get it, zipping back and forth. And I'd catch these guys all the time, doing tattoo stuff and getting that done. And so what he's done is he's just eventually worked his way into paying some people for these tattoos. Some of them I truly believe look horrible enough. He might have tried some of this stupid stuff on his own, but it's difficult to say. But you'll catch them doing it, and it's things like batteries. If they had less access to batteries, it would be harder on them. But then they just plug into the outlets. You take away the outlets from them, and then you've also taken away their way to smoke, which I think is a good thing. But the way they just make these amazing machines, ballpoint pen, a motor, a clip, a little bit of wire, and a battery, and then they take a little toothpaste lid, put their little bit of ink in there that they've made from the lamp black and the baby oil and the shampoo, and they're right off to town. One of the things that they used to get really mad at me for is I would not only take those items once I found them, but then I go into their stash and their locker, and I take all of their stencils. And so you take their stencils away, and stencils are a big thing because they'll use those stencils over and over and over again for the same tattoos. Especially if you find a good one like that on the stencil that's a gang tattoo, you can use that potentially for points of validation, or at least to make a note that they're affiliated with whatever it is, skinheads, Crips, Bloods, or whatever. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I implore people to go and look that up on Tier Top, because like I say, I think that's one of my bigger videos on there. Oops. Is Anthony gone?
I'm trying to find the video.
Oh, okay. I thought you were in the restroom again.
What? No, I'm trying to find the video with the tattoo, because it is over 100,000 views.
Yeah, it is. It's up there.
Yeah, let me see if I could find that. But I wanted to mention something. I'll look for it. But real quick, let me get myself back. I'm going to try to. I'll email myself the link to that, because I want to show people. Guys, it's a pretty interesting video, and I think Tara will definitely get a kick out of this. But the only thing I would say is this: if you get caught with a tattoo, it's supposed to be a charge. And like Russ mentioned, I got it right here, Russ. I got it. Let me share it in my email, and then I'll click the link. So it's a serious charge. A couple of reasons why. One, the gang thing is one, even though they don't really, the tattooing. I think they kind of pulled back on the branding a little bit, but they still do it. It depends. But more so for the diseases that could go rampant from just not using sterilized needles. But with that said, when he tattooed himself all over that face, that took time. I don't know if that was one sitting or multiple sittings. And if the officers are doing their counts regularly, they have to see this inmate. So they're going to have to see that this guy's face is all marked up. Usually, when inmates are more discreet with tattooing, you don't see it unless you may be doing a strip or something. Yes. And it comes up maybe somewhere on the body, but then, it's a couple of days later, it may look like, hey, this guy had this tattoo on him before. Was it missed? And I mean, you do the search, look for the machine, but this guy here had it directly on his face. There was no hiding it. I think, to be honest with you, Russ, when you're that blatant with making that tattoo, sad to say, and I could be wrong, I can't help but think that the officers kind of knew, but just didn't care. It's just too.
Yeah, it could be. But when you look at Wade Wilson, I mean, what's the one thing that he always tries to do is he always wants to be able to, call attention to himself, because he has, this little, group of gals paying attention to him. And so add a little bit of ink and it just goes back into, all of the drama. So, even if he's getting caught and written up or anything else, that's still attention, even if it's negative attention. So, he's actually, primed, probably, in my opinion, to kind of maybe become a little bit more of a dangerous type character, because he does want that attention. And so for him to get a headline or 2 headlines or 1,000 headlines or whatever it is, if I were those people watching over him, I would be concerned about that, because I think that plays into his whole psychological profile.
All right, so I do got the video I'm going to show everybody. I believe the video, it's a short one. It's 4 minutes and 21 seconds. But
and it's got fire in it.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing, though. So I've been doing a lot of Wade Wilson, and he is an attention seeker, like Russ mentioned. And I think that's kind of like the first sign that he's seeking attention. I know everybody's like, the bad guy attention, whatever it is. This guy just wants attention. I mean, that's just what it is. He just wants attention. He actually very narcissistic in that approach, but he wants attention. He wants to be the center of attention, even if it's negative attention. He doesn't care, because as long as he's occupying a space in your head, it works for him. So I just want to get that out there. So I think that right there, the tattoo on his face, especially, you're getting ready to go through trial, whatever it is, and you're going to put that on your face. Yeah, that really goes well. That really draws a sympathy. So I think he just wanted whatever attention he can get. I mean, good attention, bad attention, to him, it's still attention. And one of the discoveries I made when he had that call with his dad was, I'm sorry, guys, it wasn't his dad that convinced him to do the right thing. It was the moment his dad said, hey, basically, if we can tell them where the body is of Ruiz, you basically see the detectives, there's a good chance you're going to be on the news again, sort of. And he wanted that attention because he craves it. So I think what really wanted him to help the detectives wasn't because his father played some sympathy card, because that's more of the father projecting his own feelings onto him, thinking that it meant no. He wanted to be in the spotlight again, because right before that, before the father was getting into it, he was like, you were on the news, but they were talking about the murders, but they didn't say the name of the person who did the second murder, which would have been Ruiz. And he was, thinking about that. And now here's his chance to put his name next to that. Again, it doesn't matter if it's good attention or negative attention. He wants the attention. And he said they offered to cover up with makeup for trial. And he said no. Of course he said no. Because you want to here's another thing, guys. I don't know if it would go with exhibitionist or not, but it was a heightened level of attention. He knew by putting that on his face, it was a sudden change in an unexpected context. And it would bring just that extra level of attention. And another thing, I listened to the other phone calls with this innocence lawyer, the Innocent Project thing. Even if she is, I don't know. But that is the most unprofessional legal counsel call I have ever heard. Russ, if you get a chance, you got to listen to it. It is just, she's flirting. She's outright flirting with this guy. And this is someone who's claiming she works for the Innocent Project. And I'm sorry, guys, if you have someone that's representing that, and that's someone that you allow in to work with you, representing your name, it makes me question everything about that Innocent Project. It really does. It makes me question. It makes me, what it makes me question, Russ? It's right. Not a real, okay, she was a scammer. I thought so, because that whole, I listened to it. Someone sent me the link. I was driving to work today. The first part of the dialogue is with him and the girl, Jessie, whatever her name is. I forget her name, but she's connecting with the lawyer. And then the second half of the dialogue is him and this lawyer, or supposedly she's a lawyer. And it was just so disgusting. It was like this flirting dialogue that really made you just sick to your stomach. He is he is truly narcissistic. I mean, he is truly so vain, so into himself. It's actually sickening. Let me see. Okay, yeah, let me show you guys this video. Hey, Russ, this was a great video you did. And if you guys are interested, after we do this video, I'll show you another video Russ did so you guys want to hear a funny little story. Okay, yeah, maybe she is pretending. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you something. That dialogue on the phone, there's no way she's a real lawyer. Or if she is, shame on the Innocent Project. But Russ also did another video during COVID. People were pushing for sanitizer with alcohol to give to the inmates. And Russ was nice enough to do a video showcasing how inmates can get the alcohol from the sanitizer. And basically, he broke it down. It's a real good video. He actually shows you how it's done. That video is probably close to 100,000 views or more, and I'm sure it's killed a few people. I'm joking. That was my intent. Yeah, it's a joke, but a lot of people have watched that video that we didn't expect to watch it, who are literally in the comments saying, oh, this doesn't taste good, or this doesn't taste bad. And I forget if we put a disclaimer in the video not to drink it. I forget who we're talking to now. You got to put disclaimers. Don't eat Tide Pods. Okay, let me show you this video by Russ, guys. It's a good video. This is going to show you how inmates. Okay, yeah, JoJo saw the video with the sanitizer. It's interesting. If you guys are,
that's great, JoJo.
Yeah, but she never. But wait, hold on. It's a good thing because JoJo knows. She doesn't need a disclaimer. She knows not to drink it. That's the key. So next time we'll have JoJo do the disclaimer at the very beginning, Russ. Okay, so this is the tattooing. This is interesting. All right, Russ, here, let me play this. Look at you, Russ. This is older.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Russ Hamilton. I'm a retired sergeant with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Just thought I'd run a quick video by everyone. Anyway, sometimes I'm my own worst enemy in that I forget that not everyone knows everything that I assume that they know. A while back, I was talking to an officer who thought that tattoo ink came from ballpoint pens. So anyway, that got me to thinking that, you know what, there may be some people out there that also don't know, or that even if you do know, there might be some people out there viewing these videos that would just find this interesting. So anyway, here we go. I'll take you right through it here. This is an ink factory. Anyway, that's the cover for collecting the stuff you do the ink for. All right. This is a little piece of aluminum can with a hole in it. This is what holds our fuel. In this case, it's going to be baby oil. This is our wick that's going to be lit. So anyway, I'm going to go and I'm going to assemble all this stuff. It's real easy. The wick just goes down in here. It absorbs the baby oil up. It comes through here. It lights. It's pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. All right. And then the box goes on top and it collects the soot. All right. And the soot is a substance that was often referred to. My old partner, Paul Blacklock, taught this to me. It's called lamp black. And it's just soot. And what happens is you take and you put that soot inside of shampoo. And shampoo, being a detergent, causes the particulates to stay suspended very well. You put a little rock in there, stir it up, and that's all there is to make an ink. So anyway, we're going to go and come back, and I'm going to show you how it works here real quick. Anyway, this particular ink factory here is obviously, I'm letting it burn a little out of control just for effect here. You actually would have the wick down quite a bit further and stuff. But you can see it's making a little bit of smoke there. You would have to put, obviously, if there was a flame that big, you'd have to put a bigger box than this over it. Or a lot of times they'll just use a paper bag. Anyway, all of that collects the soot, scrape the soot out, put it in your shampoo bottle, with a little rock in there to keep it all shaken up and stuff. And that, my friends, is how you make tattoo ink. So anyway, that's all there really is to make an ink. It's not a big deal. It's pretty well known and stuff. But if you have all the pieces in your head about how the whole prison economy works and stuff, sometimes it can help you locate other things. Some of the guys out there, I mean, this will be their main hustle. This is what they do. They make tattoo ink for other people because they have access or they have enough privacy to get it done, what have you. A lot of different people out there, a lot of different inmates have different hustles, and this is just one of them. So anyway, I hope you like this. Hope you give me a big thumbs up. Hope all of you will stay safe out there.
Now, I just want you to know, after Russ did that video, gang recruitment went up all across the country. Okay, Russ, what do you think? So, Russ, guys, if you guys want, I have it on standby now. If you guys want to see the video with how to get the alcohol out of the sanitizer, if you guys are interested, it's another short video I could show you guys. Just let me know if you're interested. But Russ, got to give a breakdown of that. Russ, you sound like what's the guy named? Dr. Wizard? What was it? Mr. Wizard?
Mr. Wizard?
Remember?
Yeah, well, these guys are really ingenious in prison. I've seen so many things that were just crazy. I have, sometime I'll throw them back out there again. I have a whole inmate manufactured soldering gun, pictures that I took of that. This guy, that was his hustle. He would fix people's radios and TVs and stuff like that. And he actually scraped all the paint off of the cookie sheet on his bunk and made a griddle, and they were smuggling back batter and eggs and stuff like that and cooking them up on that because he had fastened, hot pot elements all over the bottom of it. These guys, they're ingenious. I mean, they spend all their time doing things like this. And so when you find something that they've messed with in an ingenious fashion, you should be paying attention because they may be doing it for ostensibly, not so nefarious reasons when it could be something like an escape or it could be something like an attack. We once found a bunk that was attached to a resistor with a electrical cable on it, that was designed to shock us. So, these guys can figure out ways not to trip breakers, but still shock you and everything else. So, pay attention. It's a lot of fun in ways, but you got to take it deadly serious because it could be it could be meant in very bad ways. Oops, you are muted.
All right, you got me. I do have the other video right now. It's at 147,000 views. The video with the 147,000 views. Now, since we only have 9 people watching, when one person says they want to see the video, we're going to go ahead and show it. So, Tower, that's 10%
to get 9 more views.
Yeah, 9 more views. So this one's a 14-minute video because if I remember, Russ also gives a little bit of some information prior. Now, remember, guys, a little bit of context here. This was during COVID, and basically there was a push at one point to bring in the sanitizer that had the alcohol, and we were going against it. So out of desperation, Russ wanted to put this video together to let people know the danger. So Russ's intent was not to kill millions. It wasn't.
It just turned out that way.
It just turned out that way. But his intent was everybody was pushing on get that alcohol because it sanitizes better. And we were adamant that, no, you can't have that. That's going to cause bigger issues. So eventually we had a long discussion and we decided to put the video up because it was going on deaf ears. It really was. And the video wound up doing pretty well because it was timely. I mean, that's the key. It was timely. All right, so let me show you guys this video, and we'll dedicate this showing to Tara, because Tara's asked for it. Hey, what's up, CKaz? All right, so Tara said, imagine if those guys didn't choose a life of crime and put their creativity and innovation in the real. Yeah, let's get to that. Hold that thought, Tara. After I show you this video, I definitely want to get to that because we could talk about some of the innovative things that we've seen because I got tons of videos of discussing weapons that they make. Remember, I'll go into this before we go into the video. I will tell you this right now. Hey, Gideon, I will tell you this, guys. The less resources people have, the more innovative they become. So I know like people like, oh, those restrictive housing units. How do they get all these things? Let me tell you something. The most innovative inmates you've ever dealt with are the ones in those most restrictive units. You will be shocked what they can make with just things that we would not think about making those things out of. That's all I can say. But so when you start to limit the resources, people become more innovative. So we have to become more resourceful. All right, let me show you this video by Russ. This hold on one second. Let me get it in. Share screen. All right, Russ, this is you right here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Russ Hamilton. I'm a retired sergeant with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Hi, my name is Russ Hamilton. I'm a retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections. Doing this video at the behest of Anthony Ganji and Tier Talk. The other night, Anthony and we did a little spot on inmates and alcohol. Basically, we did a little spot on 2 yahoos that ended up drinking some hand sanitizer, getting drunk, stealing an ATV, going on a joyride, that sort of thing. So this is a follow-up to that, and this is going to be a little bit more instructional on inmates and alcohol. So basically, in the correctional setting, there's 3 ways inmates can get their hands on alcohol. And that's, first of all, they can manufacture it. Second of all, they can smuggle it in. And third of all, they can use what I call non-conventional sources to get a hold of it. So anytime you've got alcohol inside a institutional setting like that, it's really, really dangerous. Can't emphasize enough the number of fights and riots and assaults on staff and that sort of thing that I've seen over the years, and the drunks that I've had to fight and break apart from fighting at each other and that sort of thing. But it brings me back to a story in recognizing the type of security threat that this is. I was in a dorm one time, caught a couple of inmates drinking. It was obvious that at least one of them was drunk. I told my officer that was with me to start handcuffing the one guy. He handcuffed that guy. I handcuffed the other. I got some people down. We ended up escorting them out, finding 6 or 8 gallons of alcohol. Took them down to start, to see how inebriated they were and to wait to see how long it would be before I brought them back onto the unit. Well, anyway, while this was going on, the officer approached me and said, "Hey, that was just Pruno." And so Pruno is our name for inmate manufactured alcohol, of course. And what this officer was doing, he was very young in his profession, and he was mirroring some of the other stuff that he'd seen other staff react to. And these staff apparently weren't as hip to the problems that causes as well. Alcohol in the correctional setting is very serious, and it causes all kinds of violence. So when I ran it down to him, the things that it could cause, the fact that we could get into fights with those inmates, if we let them back on the unit, they could cause fights in their dorms and stuff, broken jaws, sliced up faces, all that kind of stuff that I've seen from the result of this. Then he kind of understood. And alcohol is something I would never take lightly. Especially inside. This was inside a dorm, so it was a much bigger safety issue. So anyway, to get on with fighting that, and starting with the first part of this video, we're going to talk about manufacturing and some of the detection processes of it. First of all, when inmates manufacture alcohol, basically it's a process that uses sugar and yeast. And the ways that they get yeast are, you can get it directly from bread. I've had inmates tell me that they get it from their toe jam. I don't know how real that is or whatever, but just a little bit of information for you there. But anyway, the basic thing is that you have to have sugar. Tomato paste is a great way for them to. It has high in sugar content. Sometimes some forms of Kool-Aid, that sort of thing. We tried to remove all sugar and sugar products because, even candy can supply the sugar. So basically you've got sugar, and then you've got alcohol, and the in-between actor is yeast. So yeast, basically, it's a little animal that eats sugar and shits alcohol. And so that's the way that you end up getting that. Now, when I talk about detecting for this kind of stuff, it's a little bit more complicated than just all that. These inmates, they have to go to great lengths to cut up pieces of fruit to get as much sugar as they can in different things. And then they'll try and heat all that up because yeast does much better in a really warm environment. And as that stuff heats up, that alcohol will start to ferment, and then it makes a really bad smell. And most of you out there that have been doing this for a while, you know what that smell smells like. And it smells horrible. It just smells like, it smells like rotting fruit, of course. So anyway, but there's different ways that they go about hiding this. So this is just a quick few little tips on that. The obvious places that you look are always in trash cans and things like that. But you know what? I have found this stuff bagged up and put in the bottom of a mop bucket with dirty water poured over the top of it. I mean, they're serious about being able to, hide their stuff and being able to drink it later. I've seen it where they've actually taken a bag of it and flattened the bag out so flat and put it underneath the door and rolled it all the way under to the other side to a locked door that you would think they won't have any access to, but they can just pull it back out from underneath. And then any other where your imagination can take. I found it in boxes of crackers and hidden inside other, soda bottles and all sorts of things like that. So, it's a crazy, crazy thing. And as I said before, I'm going to say over and over and over again, it's really, really dangerous. So anyway, those are just a couple of quick points on that. The smuggling issue with getting alcohol in, not really going to touch on that. That's pretty obvious because it's just like any other thing you smuggle in. Probably a little bit more difficult because it's not like dope or something like that. But the non-conventional source, that's what we're going to really talk about in this little last part of the video here. In this bit that Anthony and I talked about, this was a situation where these guys, somehow they got access to hand sanitizer, and that's all of it took. Well, the hand sanitizer is really, really, really high in alcohol. And so all that they had to do, now I don't know if they did this, they may have just drank it down like it was, but it's really, really easy to just get the alcohol out of that stuff right away. All you got to do is put a little bit of salt on it. And after that, all you got to do is drink it, because guess what? Salt doesn't dissolve in alcohol. And so, well, you probably would get some of the taste anyway. But these guys, when they're desperate like that, who knows how that they don't care about how they imbibe it. But they can do that. Or if they've got time, And I've seen this too before. They can do a makeshift still where they keep all that alcohol in a bag. If they can get a piece of tubing or something and wind it around, heat that bag up. Alcohol is way more volatile than water, so it will evaporate first. So you could theoretically distill it out like that. Sometimes they'll do that with their Pruno product as well, but it's more difficult because it's very, very low concentrations inside that Pruno. So anyway, that's just the basis for that. I'm going to pick you up because this is high quality production here. Just show you a quick little. If I can go there, if you can see this, this is your chemical formula. That's sugar and that's alcohol. So anyway, I'm not a chemist, but I have read a lot about this stuff, and I've chased a lot of Pruno in my life, thousands and thousands of gallons worth. So anyway, in a minute here, I'm going to take you straight to a demonstration. I'm going to show you how you can distill this stuff directly out of the hand sanitizer gel and be able to drink it down. I'm not going to drink it though.
Let me just put the disclaimer in real quick. Do not do this at home. Okay, we're good. All right, hold on. I'll put you guys back. Hold on.
All right, this is Russ Hamilton again. I am back, and I am ready to continue on with this little experiment here and this little instructional on inmates and alcohol. So anyway, what I did was I went and I got my hand sanitizer there, Daylogic Advanced. On the back of it, I couldn't get the camera to focus on it, but I'll tell you that it says that it's 70% alcohol by volume. 70% of alcohol by volume translates to 140 proof for those of you out there that know your alcohol. Now, in this case right here, as you see this, you can see that it's the goop on top. Okay, well, an inmate, in order to prepare this to be drank, really needs to get into a liquid form. The easiest way to do that is to use common ordinary salt. Now, this is super iodized, but I don't think that makes any difference. But what's going to happen is I'm going to pour this in there, and there's going to be a reaction, and the reaction is going to be very slow moving. And what's going to happen is the salt is going to move all the way from the top down to the bottom of the glass, and it's going to leave liquid instead of gel above it. And all of that liquid is going to be 70% pure alcohol, right? And so people are going to say, well, what about the salt? That's going to be pretty nasty. No, it's not going to be nasty because alcohol, for the most part, does not dissolve salt. So this is the way it's done. They could drink that straight, but that's not the way I've ever heard of it being done. They could also, theoretically, I've heard of this being done, is they could put the liquid remains in a bag and they could evaporate it out using a tube to try and distill it. But I think that would mean that they have a lot more time on their hands than most inmates do. So here we're going to go with the salt, and I'm going to pour a layer over the top of it, and that layer is going to progress toward the bottom. Okay, so now we're just going to be watching it. Now, if you recall a little bit in your high school chemistry class, the ways that you can increase a reaction, you can mix it, you can heat it, or you can add a catalyst. So we don't have any sort of catalyst, and in this case, you could mix it up, but that would break up some of that gel and it would get back into the liquid, and we don't want that to happen. I could heat it up, I could nuke it, but then you wouldn't get to see it. So anyway, as you watch, just watch, all of the salt's going to move down, and what's left on top, as you can see, as it's starting to go down, that liquid being left behind, that's going to be 70% alcohol right there. And that's going to be ready to be drank, ready to be belted down. So anyway, here in a minute, I'll take my fork and I'll show you that it's indeed just regular splashable liquid here. I'm going to
add just a little bit more to this little place on top. See, that's gonna push that whole salt plate down a little bit. I don't know if you can see it very well on here, but there's a real clear line here between the liquid on top and what's left of the gel here on the bottom. This part's starting to sag. It's going a little bit faster than the rest of it. So there it is. You can see now it's all starting to move down toward the bottom. Now you can see it kind of lumped around there. This didn't happen as evenly as I would like for it to have, because it's left a little bit of that gel on top there. I'm going to pour a little bit more on it, push that down. All right. And you see that the rest of that gel is coming out. Now, if I go on top here, you can see that this has become all liquid. All that gel is coming out. See, I can scoop a little bit of those gelatin crystals out still and stuff, because that didn't react as equally as I would have liked for it to have. But now you can see that it's liquid form on the top. A little bit of lumps in there and stuff. That could be taken out with a coffee filter. But as you can see, the reaction was there. So anyway, I hope you guys really liked that little demonstration. Hope you learned a little bit about the methods that Inmate used to get alcohol. I hope you guys will take it very seriously when you do an alcohol interdiction, especially on those special days like the day before Super Bowl or the day of. And I hope you'll all stay safe out there.
All right, Russ. So the production cost of that video, if everybody wants to know, was $10. You know, and that's $5 for the sanitizer, $4 for the salt, and $1 for Russ's scientific skill.
Yeah, but that's 25, almost 30 years of knowledge. The things that you learn in prison that are mostly useless in the outside world, though. I mean, it's I can't even remember where I heard how to do the salt thing, but at some point, inmates just talk to me a lot. So, for whatever reason, and I was never very friendly, so I don't know what they were doing, but.
Well, Russ, I think with someone like yourself, like myself, we also have very attentive ears, and it's because we want to know what's going on. But I think a lot of people may think it's also being sympathetic when we actually just have we know in corrections, you need an increased sense of curiosity. Hey, Russ, I wanted to touch on this real quick. So Tara mentioned, imagine if some of these guys didn't choose a life of crime and put their creativity and innovation in the real world. It's kind of sad. And it is. I want to mention something, guys. We kind of touched on it before we went into the video. But, this is where it's always a cat and mouse. I always tend to think that, where we tend to be the cat, kind of like Tom and Jerry, and we're always chasing after the mouse, because once we kind of get an idea of what they're doing, they kind of adjust and shift patterns, and, we're kind of back at it again. And there's so much you can learn. I know when we were doing the videos on Wade Wilson, and we also did another video on the active shooter, the young kid, Colt Gray. Some people that, were watching the video, someone said, well, Ganji, what makes you guys a professional? You're not psychiatrists, you're not psychologists, and I get it. But I'm not giving out diagnosis. Neither was Russ, neither was Joe. But we work in an environment where we have to safely get into their heads. That's how we survive. And I'm going to say the word safely because there is boundaries. I mean, if you don't do it in a controlled fashion, it could take control of you. You could become who you're chasing after. But when you work in corrections for so many years, even if you're not intentional with it, just passively, just trying to play catch up, and always questioning motives. I mean, that's the big thing with us, is always questioning motives. I mean, when someone asks us something or requests it, whatever it is, we're always questioning the motive behind things. You can't help but through the years develop a keen sense of who you're dealing with. Sincerely, I mean, truly a keen sense of who you're dealing with. And this is who they are. This isn't a mask that they put on for the media. This is pretty much who they are. So having said that, when people say, well, you know, what gives you the expertise? It's not the degree. You know, again, we're not creating diagnosis. We're just telling you what it is because we walk amongst them. I mean, yeah, you could have these psychologists who, you know, make a study of it, or these psychiatrists who make a study of it. And after 100 interviews with 100 different serial killers, where they get to spend an hour or two with them, they may discover all this stuff, and that's great. But how about walking next to one for 25 years? I mean, imagine how powerful that could be in its own right. So I just want people to realize that there's a lot of stuff that the people that work in corrections, their understanding of the criminal mind, I think is an untapped resource, because we are there, we're exposed to who they are, and we're constantly having to adapt and adjust with them just to kind of, I'm not even going to say to stay ahead, Russ. I'm just going to say to kind of break even. But I love Tara's thing about the innovation. I mean, how innovative can they be?
Yeah, it truly is amazing. You know, I've seen and been around, you know, corrections from a lot of different perspectives. You know, especially in the early years and so forth. You know, I was all about, you know, hammering these guys for, you know, every bit of dope, every cell phone, every weapon that I could get. Every time I had a chance to break up a fight or stop an assault, and hammer them. But you know, there's another viewpoint too, and that truly is. I believe that is public safety, facility safety, and all that. But there's a part of it too that, you know, goes to the rehabilitation aspect. Is it practically impossible to rehabilitate inmates? It's very difficult, and you know, we're only able to you know, change the numbers by slight amounts, but it can be done. But that's part of public safety too. I think that you know, part of it is that if you're becoming a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you can learn what you're told, right? It's a different thing if you have an ability to learn what you experience. Some people that get into the profession are never able to contextualize or understand the things that they're seeing, thinking, you know, hearing, smelling, whatever it is inside the correctional setting. I went in there, and I think that I just was, you know, blessed with an ability maybe to digest what it was that was going on. And so I made it interesting for myself by becoming that person that wanted to be there to bust people for drugs and weapons and cell phones, and you know, validate gang members and do the kinds of things that I wanted to do. And so you know, I think that I've had a progression over the years because I'm no longer behind a badge, but I think my ability to communicate with inmates, because I still do that on a daily basis now, my ability to understand where they're coming from, does that make me better at helping to do the rehabilitation? I think it does. But how would I put this? I would say I don't think that it is as easy for me to prove my efficacy to myself or anyone else, because I'm not able to say, hey, you know, I found a weapon. Hey, I found dope. Hey, I found cell phones. Or, hey, I caught these guys tattooing, and this is for a certain type of gang. Or I helped put down a riot and assault, this, that, and the other thing. Now you never know whether or not you're actually doing something that benefits society as much. But I think that level is important. I also think that it can be very oversold. And I think that sometimes the people that get into this, they're more focused on doing good for individuals than they are for doing good for society as a whole. And so that sometimes causes them to lapse into a position where they won't hold individuals accountable. And I think that that's where rehabilitation and reentry, and things often go wrong. Okay, I'm off of my soapbox now.
No, I just want to tell you something, Russ. I just sold your recipe for sanitizer alcohol to Starbucks. They're going to call it the Germinator.
Okay,
You know,
I like that.
Sanitizes every sip.
Yeah,
it is.
with a twist
Hey,
of Lysol.
Yeah. Hey, Don, you know what's funny, Russ? Also, I want to, and I think Russ will understand this too. I'm sure you guys will as well. But so when you work in corrections, guys, especially even at the admin level, you're going to get, you know, what the inmates say, what they tell their families, all this stuff. You know, what the officers say. And I think, and I'm going to try to say this as balanced as we can, because I do believe that people can change. And the reason why I'm going to say that is because I know the dedicated work behind the people that do it. So I do believe it may not be in huge numbers, but you got some dedicated staff that are going to at least find the one. And I've seen people that have truly made changes. But with that said, it's crazy because sometimes the families who they know deep inside, some cases, that their loved one could be a bit troubled, but they see their loved one as someone they would hope them to be, and that paints a picture of who they believe they are in the present. Now, guys, I don't want this to be universally carried, just for this scenario here, because as I said, in context, I do believe people can change, but I want to paint a picture real quick of where manipulation could come into play. So you got the family that sees the hope, and sometimes this hope is played on by the inmates or played on by their loved ones who may need something. As I saw in the Wade Wilson video, they play on that, and the family gets confused between the hope of where they would like them to be to where they are now. It's a projection that the inmate is able to take advantage of, which Russ had covered in a show a while back about just their thought process and how we, normal, you know, sympathetic human beings, we may project too much onto them, not knowing their mindset. So for us, what we see is, I mean, it's both future oriented. I'm not saying that, but what we may see is what they could be. And our bias tends to lean towards the negative because that also relates to our survival. Because if I would look at this wonderful picture of hoping that all good is what's coming my way with them, then I'm easily going to be taken advantage of. I'll be extremely gullible, very suggestible. But having said that, we're trained to know what they could be at any moment, which causes us, and I'm going to say this, it doesn't make us fall into a state of paranoia, because universal precaution is not paranoia. It's not stop everything. And no, it's just move forward slowly move forward. But if managed correctly, it's a very healthy perspective in our world. But it has to be balanced. I mean, I did a show recently about the switch going on and off. That's a bunch of crap. You know, you got to maintain balance. But with that said, the balance is basically knowing what they could be, yes, and having that as a safety measure, but still allowing for some level of interaction. And at the end of the day, if things go a great way for them, that's great. But I've always been aware that there is always that other side. I think sometimes the family, and I'm sure Russ would agree, they get so blinded with their own projection of hope, no matter how many times they've been burned, the inmate is able to paint that hope into a picture of now. And then we wind up having conflict sometimes with the family because we're trying to tell them, like, basically, you know, this is what happened. I know he's telling you this, but this is what happened. And then what happens here is, this is the crazy thing, guys. And this is true. I love this. It's called the paranoia or being paranoid. Oh, that's Tara. Yeah, that's Tara. Yes, with it. But you want to hear something funny, guys, about all this? Is that in the end, as I said, in this profession, and Russ, even on the rehabilitation side, I mentioned, of course, we believe people can change. But with that said, we there's a safe balance between, you know, knowing who you're dealing with, so having that barrier up there, and then trying to create the change, knowing at the end of the day, whatever you do is filtered through what the agency expects. That's why you don't work for the inmate. you work for the agency. The agency provides you the barrier that you filter the help through, whatever effort you're going to provide. Because if you remove the barrier, then the problem is there's nothing standing in between you and the inmate. And when there's nothing standing between you and the inmate, it is a very, very dangerous world. Guys, not to market here because I'm not, but I've written the 2 books here, Manipulation Decoded. But this book right here that's out in the market that just came out, Understanding and Preventing Undue Familiarity. This is when the barrier is broken. I don't think it just applies to corrections, but it has a stronghold in corrections. But this is when you allow for that direct connection between you and that inmate to exist without the filtered boundary of the expectation of the agency, the expectation of your peers. What's your thoughts? Because there's a lot there, Russ, but would you agree?
Yeah. I think that it's just well worth our effort to, expound on some of this. Necessarily, some people that are in corrections are obviously, like I was, much more focused on the enforcement aspect, as well they should be. But it takes, a more rounded approach if you're actually going to make any inroads with regards to rehabilitation. But that doesn't mean that rehabilitation needs to be front and center either. Balance is that necessary thing, and having been able to, from different positions, to react to things differently. I don't have to react to the inmates that I provide my services to in the same way that I would have reacted back when I had a badge. It's 2 very different things. Now I can just, pass it off onto some deputies and tell them if there's something that they need to know. So those 2 things, it would be better off if both sides understood the other side a little bit better. I think that, sometimes from my perspective, I think that, I see some of the people doing the reentry and rehabilitation thing as being somewhat blind and naive. I think in some cases that's true. I think in other cases, some of them are like me in that they are able to, hey, I can pass this stuff off because I'm not wearing the badge. It's not safety and security. It's just my ability to, better establish rapport. Now, when we talk about, switching things on and off because of the way that we do things with regards to survival, yeah, that is really not viable because we're human beings and we don't actually have those abilities as much as we would like them. The way I broke it down in my own mind was there's this great word. It's qua, Q-U-A, and it means to act in the capacity of. And so when I would get home, I would be a correctional officer acting in the capacity of being a husband and a father and those good things, and just, minimizing the part that was a correctional officer. I get back to work, and then I'm a husband, but I'm acting now in the capacity of being a correctional officer at that point. And so you have to learn not to switch things on and off, but you have to learn how to transition from one hat to another hat and understand that you are acting in the capacity of something wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And the real trick is knowing what you're acting in the capacity of. And so that was just always a word I carried with me, that qua, Q-U-A, through all the years and thinking about that. So anyway, I feel now I'm starting to aimlessly ramble. So we'll switch it back to Anthony for a second, but I hope somebody found that useful or enlightening or something.
It is, Russ, because when we did the show on the switch, we tell people that it's not about being on or off, because there's nothing in corrections or just in managing people that says you have to turn off who you are, because who you are is the foundation for every role you play. And I think what happens is, and I want to read something for Tara real quick, but I want to mention this real quick. Sometimes people wind up thinking like, okay, so my home life is really who I'm at. No, I mean, it is. It is a part of who you are. but so is every other role you have to play. It just, some things may have more significance than others. And sad thing is people mix it up and they wind up turning off who they are. It's sincerely, it's true. And then what happens here is when they go to work or they go home, that light switch bullshit becomes so confusing when it's like, you know what? It's not about turning on or off. It's about keeping things balanced. It really is. It's about understanding the role you are in that moment and being in that moment. And yes, guys, believe it or not, there are certain things that you learn from every role you play that could have a very good impact in the other roles that you play, as long as it's not taken to excess. An example is, as a correctional officer, you're very vigilant. So in that environment, I'm vigilant. You know, I'm my eyes are. I mean, it's just natural. You're in that environment. Your body, it's natural. You don't, you know, when you're at the home life, you don't want to be as vigilant as you are. It's going to be look like it's paranoia, but there is a good sense of how that vigilant can help you in your home life, as long as it doesn't get carried away to being paranoid. I mean, you know, there are times where, you know, I always use the Santa Claus scenario, but, you know, the kids want to go on Santa Claus. And here I am working with pedophiles. In my mind, every Santa Claus is a pedophile. And I tell my kids, no, you can't go on Santa Claus today. And that could be on me, because I could be robbing the kids of an experience because of my own paranoia dealing with who I deal with. But there's also something else with that too. There's also a benefit of me knowing what's out there in regards to what exists in the world, but not in an effort to make me paranoid, but maybe vigilant to certain things that most people wouldn't see. So therefore, when my kids want to go do Santa Claus, my universal precaution would be, of course we can, but I may be a little bit cautious, but I'm still making the effort to have my daughters, you know, do their thing with Santa, you know? So I think it is a very fair balance. But when you look to turn one thing off, turn one thing on, eventually you just forget who you are, because that switch thing is ultimately going to be you. I always tell people, like, it's about who wears the uniform. At the end of the day, yeah, you know, maybe I see something at work and maybe my peers will help me get through it so I can go back to work, but my family's the one that helps me get through me, you know, me. I could be very vulnerable. I want to talk to Tara real quick on something. So chapter 7, real quick, I want to read something to you real quick. She asked a very good question about, do more women COs or males get manipulated by the inmates? I mean, obviously, this is a male-dominated profession, even though we do have a lot of females, and it's still a male-dominated profession. But I think the number is kind of unique, because you got a lot of males that could get caught up with females. You got a lot of females that could get caught up with males. But I thought I can answer it this way. In chapter 7 of my book, I talk about how the game is played differently depending on your gender. And I wanted to read this to you real quick, because this to me is my favorite chapter in the book on inmate manipulation. And I thought Tara would like this. Now, guys, mind you, there's never black and white. But I think this really does have a strong foundation. But, you know, it may not fit, you know, nothing's ever 100%. But from my own experience, this is what I've seen. So this would be real quick, guys. Does the game being employed change depending on the gender of the targeted staff member? For the most part, yes. There's a shift in the process. Now, mind you, guys, how I define gender here may not be universally applicable now, but it does make sense, because at the time, and I still believe most people, when they relate to this gender, this may be how that gender expression is. It's politics, man, it screwed me, but now, be mindful, nothing's 100%. Therefore, there'll be many professionals that don't fit this criteria. So this is just food for thought. That's the key. So let's begin with discussing how female inmates employ their game with a male staff member. So I want you guys to hear this out real quick. The physical relationship may provide the female inmate with the leverage needed to fully compromise staff and ultimately make their wanted request. So when a female inmate targets a male staff member, the inmate may look to push the male staff member into acting out on their animalistic nature. The female inmate will push the physical, so that's the sexual, and observe how the male staff members react towards them. The inmate is looking for any signs of attraction. This can include the body language of the male staff member, where the staff member focused their attention on. Like, or where they obviously don't, because that's another thing. You could see that as well. Sexual references while communicating and seeking the inmate's attention, knowingly or unknowingly. Excuse me. In order for this game to be successful, the female inmate will give, this is the difference here. This is the main difference here between male and female. In order for this game to be successful, the female inmate will give the male staff member the illusion of control. The illusion of control is paramount. A male staff member wants to avoid at all costs being put into a position where they are in need of protection or reliance on a female inmate. Now that's going to shift with the female officer or the female staff member to the male inmate. But for the male inmate to the, for the female inmate to the male staff member, that power shift is extremely important. The illusion of control is also an effort by the inmate to minimize the staff's perception of the risk as defined by the consequences of being caught in the illegal act. So remember that power and control, they'll minimize by saying, well, I won't turn you in. And then that kind of gives the male officer, they falsely believe that they have more control than they actually do. Being professional should be the main reason why staff maintains a proper boundary. So it has nothing to do with getting caught. So again, for me, when an inmate starts to minimize the consequences and effort, let's say, to play their game, it's not going to work on me because I have moral value. So it's not that I don't do the wrong thing because I'm going to get caught or because I'm going to get arrested. I don't do the wrong thing because it's the fucking wrong thing. It's just that simple, which makes it harder to manipulate the person because the foundation can't be moved, as opposed to, the inmate minimizing a consequence. And now once that consequence doesn't exist, well, then, maybe I will try. So for those officers who are thinking, yeah, I'm not going to do anything foolish because I don't want to lose my family or I don't want to get arrested. Well, when the inmate builds trust and says, I won't report you, all that bullshit justification, because that's what it is, no longer applies. So you got to go in there with a reason. What's the reason? I do the right thing. I'm not here for that, just to kind of make it more internalized. Being professional should be the main reason why staff maintain the proper boundaries. If staff only maintains the proper boundaries because they fear the consequence of their actions, their resistance will be weak when the consequences are minimized or perceived to be non-existent. At all times, the control is in the hands of the female inmate, even though the males think it's not. It's in the hands of the female inmate. Be advised, they're using their physicality to get a rise from the male staff member. The control is extremely subtle and actually very deceiving. The male staff member will truly believe that they have total control of the path they're being led down until the moment they are taken out in handcuffs. And guys, I've seen that. I've seen it where the male believes they have control, and then finally when they separate, let's say, they decide, I can't prove they're doing anything wrong, but let's separate the two. The male, when they don't have the contact with the female, they start trying to rebuild that contact. But in this sense here, for the most part, I don't think it's based on emotions or feeling. It's based on I don't have control if that female's not next to me. Now, one last thing. I want to talk about the female staff member with male inmates, and I'd love to get Russ's perspective on this, but let me just, this other part. So as for a female staff member, the game being employed by male inmates will be slightly different. In some cases, there may be a female staff member that presents a very low level of self-esteem. The male inmate may foster a connection with that female staff member by providing her with positive attention. The manipulative inmate connects themselves to any positive thought the female staff member may have or feel about themselves. This level of connection goes beyond the workplace as the female staff member begins to think of the inmate while on her own personal time. You can see that with Joyce Mitchell, Casey White case with Vicky White. Every effort the staff member chooses to emotionally lift herself up will be connected to the manipulative inmate's game being played. I mean, Vicky White started because he complimented her ass. That's, if you watch the video, that's what it did. That's what got her attention. And next thing you know, boundaries were crossed. So here, and that was a good Netflix show if you guys didn't see it yet. Eventually, the female staff member may build an emotional connection with the inmate that travels way outside her prescribed role. This game is very slow moving, but extremely dangerous. The inmate's ability to gain trust and acceptance will eventually lead the female staff member down a path she cannot physically or emotionally escape. The inmate will even offer the compromised female staff member protection. See the difference there, guys? For the male officer, I'm not going to accept protection from a female inmate for the most part. But a female may be more willing to because she likes the protection because she wants the emotion. She wants the love. She wants that connection, that bond. So the protection is a sign of that. So she's more open to accept that. And I'm almost done, Russ. Now I got to get your thoughts on this. This offer of protection will be accepted by the female staff member because they have already knowingly given up their level of control. And by the way, guys, you notice I said the word knowingly. I truly believe that, because once the male inmate offers the female and says, hey, I'm going to protect you, and that female staff member says yes, she gave that control over. The inmates, listen, when an inmate says that they're going to protect you, they're saying so many things like, oh, your staff can't protect. They're saying a bunch of stuff. But one of the things that they're saying to me that is most important is I'm in control. Whoever's protecting me is the one that's in control. And I think in this aspect here, remember, nothing's 100%, but for the most part, the female will give it up in exchange for that protection, where the male officer will not do that for the most part. Nothing's 100%, but for the most part. Almost done, Russ. Let's see. So they've already been knowingly given up their level of control. Okay, as mentioned above, this is the main shift of the game played against male and female staff members. The male staff member, in an effort to maintain their perception of control, will not accept the offer of protection from a female inmate, whereas the female staff will. Female staff may be more aware of the control they are given away, but with that said, they have justified it by the level of trust and protection they believe they are getting in return. Russ, come on, give me some thoughts here, because I know you had something to say.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the part where, and I don't think that anyone has said it better than Anthony has here, and I think that.
Thank you, Russ. That means a lot.
And especially that part is a really super deep insight. One little layer that I think that I can add to that, and it's obvious if you just look at it to make the connections. First of all, men and women are different. All right, we respond to different motivators and things like that. But when you have a female officer working inside a male-dominated environment, the one paradigm, the one power dynamic that really changes is that person's vulnerability. And when you change a person's vulnerability, you do one thing potentially to them. I'm not saying that all female staff are like this, but you increase their amount of insecurity. And so when we look at people like Joyce Mitchell, who was already incredibly insecure about her looks, she was insecure about her place in the world. She was, insecure probably about her husband or whatever else went on. That is one type and one set of insecurities that we often look at. And we've done more on the insecurities inside the number of Anthony's books there, right? But when we see this whole other set of insecurities, being in a high threat level environment, which is exactly what a prison and a jail is, those insecurities can put that female into making bad choices potentially. And I think that that's the one exposure that you tend not to see happening to males, because males, right or wrong, but this is the truth, is that tend to be, bigger and stronger and faster and less vulnerable. I'm not saying everyone is that way or trying to make broad generalizations, but I'm saying that that one facet really gets exposed in humanity in a female, potentially inside that prison thing and jail, because of the additional vulnerabilities, which creates additional insecurities. Does that make sense?
No, Russ, it does. It fits perfectly because, guys, so Tara asked a good question, about the training. So when I developed this, even with the stuff that Russ has developed, the Tear Talk YouTube channel, the articles, because now what I'm doing now is I'm taking transcripts from certain episodes and putting the transcripts through ChatGPT. They develop an article and I send it out to Corrections One. So it's our thoughts, but they formalize it and they push it out. these are lessons that were not taught or sadly are being lost because senior staff are leaving. So I developed the books because I believed it was something that we minimized. I do. I believe it's something that training minimized because at the end of the day, they always focused on outcomes. So it would be more like, you know, I'm not going to bring drugs in, or I'm not going to bring in this, or I'm not going to have sex. And it's like, guys, that's not where the game is played. That the game's already been played at that point. You know, that wasn't what the focus was. The focus was on the interactions every day, the dynamic that you see happening all around you that you don't even realize you're being played. I mean, I did Inmate Manipulation Decoded because I wanted to highlight the games. And to be honest with you guys, that book, the Inmate Manipulation Decoded, truly was written based on an incident where I felt I could have got caught up. And it took me a while to write this because I didn't feel comfortable with expressing that level of vulnerability. But then I said, you know what? I can't be the only one. So around 2000 and I don't know, maybe about 10 to 12 years into my career, soon after I started Tear Talk. So Tear Talk's around 2011, 2012. I would say soon after that, I said, you know what, screw it. You know, I can't be the only one. So I started crossing into manipulation. I found it very fascinating. The first story is a true interaction I had, which I was able to catch myself immediately. But then I started thinking, wow, what about if I didn't? Where would the road have been? And to be honest with you, it was a situation I didn't have control of. It was a situation that my supervisor actually made me vulnerable without knowing. And again, if you guys read the book, Russ is definitely very familiar with the story, but it's just in general, without reiterating the story, because I've covered it a lot of times. Basically, they yelled at me in the unit in front of a bunch of inmates, and it was an effort to redeem myself. So the inmates saw that I was broken, and they started to maneuver. And then I really started to kind of realize that it just didn't feel right, and then eventually draw the line. But I trusted my instinct more, and I wasn't afraid of conflict from drawing the line, where I think that's another concern, Russ, if I may, is I think a lot of people get caught up because they don't want to say no, because they don't want the conflict or be considered unpopular, I guess. Would you agree, Russ, that conflict?
Oh, yeah. You know, when we talk about open conflict where, you know, you're put on the spot and then inmates coming up to console you later, classic, you know, and some people will just simply fall for that. And a lot of people would tell you, oh, I wouldn't fall for that. But, you know, in the way things play out in real life, yeah. And it's just like, you know, you just pointed out a minute ago, you know, I've had officers tell me this before. They say, well, I can't be manipulated. Well, what do you mean you can't be manipulated? Everyone can be manipulated. And they say, well, I would never do anything corrupt. Like, hold on. What does manipulation have to do with corruption? It can possibly be the end point, but it's not necessarily the end point. It's not necessarily even the goal. And so if you don't know what the goal is, how do you know if you're being manipulated or not? And so, because, you know, just being able to get by with, hey, you know, maybe the officer is going to go lighter on, you know, shaking us down tonight. That's a manipulation. Well, what ended up happening? Well, that was the night that the inmates, you know, brought in all that extra dope or whatever it is, you know. But the idea that you can't be manipulated, it's ridiculous because people, they get that hooked up. They get thinking that manipulation equals corruption. Whoa. Yeah. The inmates have won the game. If they get you to believe that manipulation equals corruption, you're done. You know, and you're not going to have broken a single law, but you've been manipulated.
But Russ, you're so spot on, because you know what's funny? So in 2020, so I released, when I was going to school, I released a book called Correctional Manipulation. I wasn't really proud of that. I didn't have a publisher or nothing like that at that point. So I wasn't really proud of that release. But it was there. It was just a bunch of articles that I wrote that I just wanted to put on paper and publish them. Even though they were already published by the Corrections One, whoever I wrote for, Huffington, whatever those places were. But Then Inmate Manipulation Decoded. I'm very proud of that book. I wound up going to a publisher, paying top dollar to get that published. That book does very well. But Russ made a good point that made me revisit this book in 2024, which is Breaking Boundaries, because the reason why was, like Russ said, corruption is the end result. Yeah, Don said first book. Yeah, Don's very supportive of us, even gives us fresh
Thank you, Don.
fresh seafood. But I thought the reason why I wanted to write the book about creating, what do I call it now? Breaking Boundaries, was because when I wrote Inmate Manipulation Decoded, I exposed games, and games that could occur through the different interactions you had. But for Breaking Boundaries, it was more about how relationships develop between someone and an inmate, and between a staff member and an inmate. And you know what's funny? This really requires you to really, there's no books on this. So you really got to feed into your own experience, ask around, really kind of do your own little research. But it's crazy how it is a very complex process, because when I walk around a facility and I look at all the interactions that are happening between staff and inmates daily, most of them being positive, by the way. I'm just going to put that out there. Most of them being positive. Russ would agree. Most of them being positive interactions. But with that said, guys, you can see that there are some interactions that are just crossing the line. I mean, it's not a complete violation, but through time, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go through the speed limit. It's 55. I'm going to go 56 because it's not that bad. And then 56 becomes the norm. And then I'm going to go 57. 57 becomes the norm. And then it's 58. And it's like that minimal compliance. And next thing you know, you're going 80 miles per hour, but you don't think it's that bad because, in your mind, the speed limit was 79. And someone's going to say, no, hold on. The speed limit's 55. You're going 80. But you're way past where you should be. But the problem is it's so slow and subtle. And what I started doing when I was looking around, I'm not going to say in paranoia, but what I tend to do, at least how like Russ got the contraband and safety and security down packed. Mine is more about this part of the game. And what I started to do was I just start sitting there, and in my head, I start playing out where these relationships could go. And my head just crosses into all these different scenarios that are extremely, some are extreme, but some make sense. And then I start charting it down. A simple dialogue about this, which really shouldn't exist, but where can that go? But the sad thing is this. This is why I wrote the book. The sad thing is, if you go to tell somebody in the moment when they're only at 56 miles an hour, they don't see themselves at 80. And it's hard to convince them that that's the road that they're on, or that's the speed that they're eventually going to go, because they don't see that. They're just not that forward thinking. In their mind, they're still there. And then you wind up spending all this time trying to convince them that, hey, you're already a mile over. Yeah, but Ganji, come on, man. Come on. It's only a mile over. It's only a mile. I'm just telling you, that's how it starts. So then when you try to tell them what the end road would be in this developed relationship, and you do cross to maybe the extreme, maybe the 80-mile mark, they don't believe it. And then next time around, you see them at 57, see them at 58. And then it's like, you know what? At one point, it's like, I tried, but I can't get the buy-in. So at this point, we got to keep our eyes out and see what happens in the future. And I think the problem with this, Russ, and the reason why I wrote these books is because I have a feeling that when you're going through it and you're being played, if you don't leave yourself open to know that you can be played, then anybody else that comes to help you, they perceive you as being judgmental, as just like, what are you judging me? As instead of I'm trying to help you, it's judgmental, because they don't see themselves going that far ahead. But I think that's why these books have to go into their hands, because listen, I may not be able to, convince you that's where you're going, but I think if I know it, I have to tell you. And then the rest is on you. The rest is on you. I am your brother or sister's keeper, so I'll tell you, but ultimately I can't control what you do with the information I provide. What's your thought? There's a lot there, Russ, but what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a lot there, but that all circles just back around to where you and I have been before, and complacency is situational awareness perceived but not achieved. Once again, it's that blackout. It's the blank out of your mind where you can't even see it, even though it's recognizable to other people. So I see. What's that one saying? He's don't engage in small talk.
Yeah, that's JoJo.
Hey, that's the thing. I there's one place somewhere on Tier Talk, I believe, where I talk about quid pro quo and how easy it is to go down that thing, this for that, even if it's just a little bit of conversation, and you give up a little bit of game. Hey, my favorite team is the Raiders or whatever, and then they can use that in all kinds of ways. They find out something about your family and they can positively mirror a very similar situation of their own family. And the next thing you know, you have a free flow of information. Does this mean that something corrupt is going to happen? No, not necessarily, but it could. And it's much more likely now. But the thing that can happen is you can negatively impact safety and security by giving up something that you may not even realize that you're giving up. And so that's where we come back around, the whole complacency thing, and complacency, it can be true blindness. It can be willful blindness. It can be inattentional blindness. There's so many different facets of it, but that's why I think though people, come to Tier Talk. This is stuff that you're not going to hear discussed on, other channels, where, homeboy correctional officers spouting bullshit,
And guys, you want to know what's funny? And you're right, Russ. We already know what channel that is. You want to hear something funny about manipulation too? So like, it's the same people, whether inside or outside the wall. I don't think the game may change a little bit because the objectives are different to some extent. But ultimately, it really does come between control, possibly through obligation or intimidation or coercion, because manipulation, ultimately, it's for some level of control. It's just how they get the control. They could go through some level of, as I said, obligation, like what Russ said, the pro quo. It could go through coercion. It could go through just, a sympathetic guilt. Someone that comes off as vulnerable could wind up getting control through guilt. I mean, the game could be played so many ways. But with that said, the target, the vulnerability, whether inside or outside the wall, doesn't change because they look for the same things. A manipulator behind the wall is looking for the same things that a manipulator is looking for out on the streets. The only thing that may change is ultimately maybe what the objective is. But if you look at the objective at the highest of tiers, it's control. So technically, the ultimate objective doesn't really change, but the specific goals may. Because again, the goals will be rated more to the context of their environment, but the overarching theme is going to be control. That's the overarching theme. And I think for me, oh, hey, take care, Tara. It was good seeing you. I think for me, the big thing about manipulation is understanding what that goal may be. So if you're being pushed towards something that you don't want to be pushed towards. Because one thing in corrections that I will tell anybody, as a correctional staff member, officer, civilian, whatever it is, don't give up control to an inmate. Lesson 101. And I'm going to say that even to supervisors, don't let inmates circumvent the front line to where you are giving the inmates the control. At the end of the day, if you want to stop games from being played, and this is in the real world too, I think people honestly know that they're being controlled. I do. I'm sorry. I think people should know enough about themselves to know when you're being pushed or pulled into situations that you don't want to be in. But with that said, most of the time that we tag along is because we don't want to have conflict. We don't want to say no for whatever reason it is, whether it's fear, whether it's I just want them to like me. I mean, whatever the extremes of that could be. The point is, you don't want the conflict of saying no. And I think that is what ultimately the manipulator knows. The manipulator knows that I can go ahead and control this person because at the end of the day, they're not going to say no to me. And it's a game for everyone. You know, for Ganji, I'll do guilt. I know I can play Ganji if I start playing some guilt. But for Russ, I can intimidate Russ. Russ is a fucking coward. Russ is a no. I'm kidding. I just wanted to add that. No, I should have reversed it, to be honest with you. I know Eric's in this chat right now, so I should have reversed that. So let me do it the right way. For Russ, maybe we could play some guilt. For Ganji, he's 5'0", we could intimidate him. But either way, the point is they know what game to play depending on the mask they wear for the role they have to play. And here's the funny thing too, guys. The funny thing is, guys, is there's no connection of the human element here. There's nothing there. So they don't mind playing you because at the end of the day, they don't give a shit about you. They don't care. So I think the fear of conflict is actually something that should be explored more when it comes to building resistance against manipulators. Like when a manipulator gets you to do something, I think you should explore and say, why are you not saying no? What's your thoughts, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, I see that and understand it. You know, people that are targeted may or may not be able to respond in that fashion, though. I mean, some people are much more adept at, you know, pulling the covers of, you know, those who are trying to do the manipulation than others. So it's, you know, it's just one of those things. If we can teach it and we can get people to recognize it, and then beyond being able to recognize it, being able to appropriately respond to it, that's where, you know, the real value of conversations like this lie, though. So just know that, you know, if you're here and your heart and mind is open to what we're saying, and just understanding that, hey, when you recognize this pattern, it's not enough to just recognize it, but you have to be proactive in interrupting it. And so when you interrupt it, you do it in a forceful manner. Not saying use force. So what I'm saying, but you do it in a forceful manner. Remember, we have all the leverage and all the authority that we should need to be able to interrupt that. We want people to be able to inhabit and grow into and exercise the full mantle of their authority. That was one thing, you know, that I was really taught early on is, you know, what the penal code says that I'm able to do. You know, what are my powers as a correctional peace officer? And guess what? I'm large and in charge because of what that statute gives me. And I should be developing my personality to be able to take that as full and as far as I can go. Sometimes we get people out there that start out timid and are able to grow into it. Sometimes we have people that start out as timid and they never grow into it. So there's a whole range of things. And I think that one of the beauty of these things is I think that eventually we're going to be able to cut this video up into about 15 different parts and put them out there at different times. Because this has been a really good, wide and ranging conversation.
You say so many. I got to comment on something. I mean, it's amazing just your broad of expertise. I mean, just how you're able to pick up a dialogue and just run with it, and just provide a perspective that's not cookie cutter. I mean, a perspective that really, I'm telling you something. Me and you worked in corrections. Together. Sorry, we do work in corrections. Sorry, there's some people actually believe I don't work in corrections. I don't know if you remember that bullshit. But if me and you worked in corrections together, let's just say, I mean, we would literally spend all day hanging out and just discussing shop, and 8 hours would fly by, 16 hours would fly by. And I mean, just the amount of dialogue imagine me and you partnered together, just watching things and just, not an effort to judge, but in an effort to build discussion and really good, enlightening discussion on basically what we could do better or what we're doing good that we should increase. But discussions like this, guys, and I want to mention this right now, and Eric's going to get this, maybe Andrew, a few people, these discussions are lost because these are experience-based discussions that unfortunately we're losing it. So discussions like this, I would say within the next 5 to 10 years, these won't exist anymore. And either the profession is just going to be black and white in the wrong direction, or it's going to be just a system where we've learned to accept the fact that the inmates have outsmarted our staff. I'm sad to say, but it's true. Because remember, guys, inmates, they got experience, they got years in, and when you wind up not being able to counter that with good senior staff members, the inmates will have the advantage. I strongly agree with that, and I think we're losing this type of dialogue. I think honestly, and this is another scary thought, Russ, and maybe a dialogue maybe we can have tomorrow, just for the correctional officer crew. But anybody's welcome to hear it, of course, but maybe more focused to the correctional officer people. But it's not even so much about the dialogue not being had. This actually is going to get to me right now. It's going to get to me. I'm not faking it. This is going to get to me. This is a legacy that we're trying to create. So everything I've ever done with Russ, with Joe, the team, it's really about creating a positive legacy, putting your work into articles and books and whatever it is that we do. The scary thing is not so much of this not being done anymore, because we may not have the experience to have these discussions. What's going to hurt me the most is because, as I said, we already have Tier Talk that keeps the legacy alive. We got great books, a great community. What's going to get me, and I'm seeing it happen now, is people will no longer even understand this type of dialogue. It just will be non-existent. It won't have value. It's just not about the journey, but rather, can you get me there? And the problem is with the get me there's is they don't learn anything. And I have a feeling, Russ, that sooner or later, these dialogues, everything we've ever done, these books will get lost because the people that truly understand it won't be there to translate the lessons. That to me is my biggest fear. Any thoughts on that, Russ? That's hard, man. That hits home.
Yeah, I think that the only thing I can say to that is that, I have a deep and abiding love for the men and women that do this job. And that's the reason why I spend time trying to, guide people a little bit, break off a little piece of knowledge. But at the same time, I will say that, conversations like this help actually, bring me up in my game, because it forces me to think, and it forces me to come up with something beyond the kind of, regular Joe Blow type of things that people just say in everyday conversation. I know that I have to move my game to the next level up, to be able to try and find things for people to sink their teeth into to really help them understand. And it puts me in a position where I think I'm getting better at it. At least I perceive myself to be getting better at it. And I just want every man and woman out there that wears the correctional badge to have a safe shift. Truly, that's what it is. Beyond that, I want them to be effective at what they're doing, and I want them to feel like they have value, value to society, value to their department, value to the facility they work in, value to the unit in that facility that they work in. And this is the only way that I have to make what I've learned in corrections have a far and abiding reach. I can't do it by working at 1, 2, or 3, 3 different or different now facilities in my correctional career. Am I going to affect some people positively? Yeah, I think so. But coming out and talking to all of you, the guys down under in Australia, the guys up top in Canada, the guys across the country in New York and Virginia and Florida, and all of that, across the country, across the world. I think that even after I'm long gone, there may be some little bit of influences there that somebody may not have even heard of me, but they've heard of some concept. Someone, they'll say, "Hey, this one guy one time he said, complacency is situational awareness perceived but not achieved," and they'll find their own lessons to take out of that, and they'll be able to maybe inspire someone. And so I want to have a lasting impression. I think that a lot of people do. And so I just hope that, this helps achieve that, because I truly enjoyed and loved what I did. Not every minute of it, certainly not every second of it. But by and large, I loved learning about what makes people tick. And I think I was able to, kind of satisfy some of my own curiosity about, why people act in the manner that they do. And so that's why corrections was a good fit for me.
Yeah. And guys, before we sign off, I want to share one more story. And this will be quick off the top of my head. I got the two girls, Mia and Sienna. Mia's 11, will be 12 coming up in November. Sienna will be 8 in January. Mia is in the 6th grade now. So, book reports, all these other good things. I love what JoJo said. You can break things down, or so even people who aren't in correction. I mean, that's the key, JoJo. We try to apply lessons that I know it does apply to the outside world, but all we could do is give the advice. How it's applied truly is like someone like yourself who knows, who's innovative, who sees the magic in what we provide. And also builds us. Once we know you guys are able to utilize it, it helps us because it keeps us motivated. So I'm with my daughter in Barnes and Nobles, and she's got to do outside of the normal work 4 book reports that she gets extra credit for, 1 per quarter, whatever, within the school year. And I told her, I said, well, let's do books together. I want her to get the extra credit just in case, just in case. So I said, what type of books are you looking for? So she starts naming books that she's very familiar with. They call them chapter books, but, very familiar with books like City of Embers, just like, books that, are very fantasy driven, but smaller books, because she's very interested in reading very small books. So I said, Mia, I know a great book that I want it to be the first book we have to read. It's one of my favorite books. It's a small book. It's 80-something pages, but it's written by Paulo Coelho. He's from Brazil, and it's called The Alchemist. I just love that book. I think it's a great story. I read it actually probably somewhere in my mid-20s, if I remember. And I also had another book of his called The Warrior. Mia showed no interest in it. I'm still going to get her to read it, but at this point she was showing no interest in it. And I said, Mia, here's the thing. When we go to Barnes and Nobles, you could go in with a target or an idea of a book that you want to see, but you always be limited to what you know. I think the greatest gift is when you just go in without having a target book that you want and just picking out something once in a while, not all the time, but once in a while, and pick up something you never even knew existed, and then see where it leads. Like, read a story about someone you never heard of before. Like, everybody in your class wants to read about the lady that flew across the world. My mind's going blank. The one that went missing.
Amelia Earhart.
Amelia Earhart. Everybody's reading that, and they tell you can choose, and you want to read what everybody else is reading. Well, I show her, a book of someone else, and well, I don't know who that is. Well, read it. I think the great thing about, and this is going to stretch in the corrections or just in general, is, we could always continue to learn what we already know, and that's great, whatever. I get it. But sometimes you gotta, kind of just go at random and just pick out something that you don't know, but you didn't know enough to even look for it. I think Tier Talk provides such a venue of videos that if you just go down the list, there are things you never even knew you had to learn. That's there. It's not a normal topic. Everybody's looking for a contraband and easy 101 topics, but then there's a dialogue of, something that people don't normally even know exists. And it's like, oh, well, I don't think I need to know that. No, cross into the things you don't know you think to know. I think some of the best learning we've ever had on this channel, or even my daughter just in life, is crossing into something new without even knowing you had to know it, and just taking value from something new. It's crazy how you could break away from the normal pattern of things that you do every day, cross into something new, and realize, like, wow, I just happened to walk into Barnes and Nobles one day, and I didn't even know I wanted to know it, but this book I just picked up randomly and loved it. What did you want to pick? No, I just, my father forced me to read a book that, I didn't even know existed, but it turned out to be a life-changing book. And I do the same too, because whatever book my daughter chooses to read, I'm also reading them. They're not books I would pick out at Barnes and Nobles for myself at my age, but it's only fair. And I will go in and find value. If she finds value in it, I will find value in that. But it's just a powerful lesson. Sometimes just randomly learn something that you never knew you need to learn. Turn on a video that you have no idea what the topic is, and you don't have to understand the whole video, but sometimes just a second you can learn something great. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed doing this tonight. I hope we're going to get some, good views out of this. I hope that, people are coming here for curiosity, for instruction, for history, knowledge, and understanding. And we're willing to bring it. So anyway, like I say, it was a fantastic dialogue, I thought.
Yeah, it was. And thank you guys for the participation. I appreciate it. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. Please subscribe. Hey, Andrew, thank you guys. Andrew, Jojo, everybody that was on here, Don, Tara, thank you for making the dialogue that much better. And we'll try to get another few shows out over the weekend. It's what we do. And as always, guys, please stay safe.